In Philadelphia, we get our drinking water from the rivers that are actually flowing through the city. In terms of stormwater, if we pollute our land, that water will become polluted as it flows across the land and then flows into our rivers and pollutes our rivers. So that just means that we have to spend a lot more money to treat that water to make it safe and to make it drinkable. And then another issue in Philadelphia and in many older cities is to have what is called a combined sewer system. And that is a single pipe, essentially, that collects all of the household sewage as well as stormwater. It collects all of that and takes it down to a treatment plant where it's cleaned up before that water is released back into the rivers. The problem is, if it's raining heavy, there's not enough capacity in the system. And it's designed to overflow into the rivers and streams, primarily so we don't cause basement backups and backups under the streets. So there is an efficiency there in having these overflows, but remember that's untreated sewage mixed with stormwater. So that's quite unhealthy. Philadelphia is about 60% combined sewer, 40% separate sewer system. The separate sewer system means there's two separate pipes, one just for the sewage, and then another set of pipes that's just for stormwater. A lot of people assume that must be better, but because stormwater itself can become so highly polluted by picking up all the pollutants that are on the ground, unless that water is treated in some way before it's released into our rivers and streams, it is causing significant water quality impairments.
The other problem is the amount of water that goes into those creeks. The amount of water in the creeks themselves changes dramatically when it rains. So we go from having a very shallow creek to suddenly having this flash flooding creek every time it rains. The banks of the creek erode, it washes away the habitat for the fish and the bugs and everything that lives in there. And so what you end up with is a stream that really can't sustain life. Stormwater is probably one of the biggest issues that Philadelphia has in terms of the pollution of the creeks.
Really, one of the major challenges to all of our urban streams is the amount of development that occurs. The whole watershed was once a green, natural area. As development occurred, we buried many of the tributaries to our streams. We also paved over the natural land with streets, with pavements, with buildings, with sidewalks, so that rainwater can no longer infiltrate into the soil, but now it's concentrated flow. So it hits the pavement, hits a street, you have a large quantity of flow going into those storm drains, which often feed directly into pipes, which discharge into the creek. So really the challenge for us is to sort of recreate areas in our urban watersheds that are naturalized again, or at least mimic what nature once did.
We're proposing a combination of conventional infrastructure and green infrastructure to address the issue of stormwater management. Conventional infrastructure really refers to what we've been doing now for a couple hundred years, and that is kind of building pipes. What most cities in the United States are doing to address their combined sewer overflow issues are building bigger pipes, big storage tanks to capture all of that excess flow, storing it until there's capacity in the system again, then having to pump out all of that back into the system so it can get to the treatment plant and get cleaned up. Here in Philadelphia, we think that it would be much better for us to pursue a different approach, and that is green infrastructure, which essentially is rebuilding our city over time in ways that help to manage the stormwater. Really reconnecting back to that natural cycle, letting the water soak into the ground, and in essence, trying to keep out as much water from our sewer system as possible.
Philadelphia, it's one of a few cities in the United States which has decided to rely upon urban greening as the fundamental, if not the primary, approach to addressing compliance with the Clean Water Act, which has to do with cities discharging high volumes of contaminated water to the receiving rivers.
We have been the first city to really say to the EPA and the DEP that we're going to make our rivers and streams fishable, swimmable, beautiful again within the next 25 years by really pushing the green approach.
What we're trying to do with these green infrastructure is to allow water that is running off of the streets and sidewalks to be managed in a more sustainable way, detained until the peak of the storm has passed and released back into the system, but at a rate at which the system can handle it without overflowing. Well, right now we're at Columbus Square Recreation Center. This is in South Philadelphia at 13th and Wharton. It's the first time that we're installing stormwater management planters in Philadelphia. Stormwater planters are planters like you see anywhere in the city, with the key difference that they're slightly below grade instead of above grade.
I love it. I love it. Wow, it looks good already.
The planters are designed to take runoff from about 8,000 square feet of street and sidewalk. The water gets into the planters and you'll actually see the water start to pond in the planters for a few inches, and that water is going to trickle through the soil. Beneath that soil, we have a stone layer. The water will go down in there, collect in that stone, and then let back into the sewer system, but at a very slow and manageable rate.
The main goal is to capture the first inch of stormwater of any storm, and that's why it is kept on the site versus being just sheet off. It would sheet off and then it would go into the streets and then into the sewer systems. And then that would travel down to the rivers, and then you're getting erosion, you're getting pollutants into the rivers, the Schuylkill and the Delaware. So that's what we're trying to cut back and diminish.
Waterbury Rec Center is this really fantastic site in that there's different things that have been done here to manage stormwater in ways that we don't usually see. There's tree trenches. Trees take up an enormous amount of stormwater, and these actually have trenches beneath them that are shuttling water to those trees from the storm drains on the street instead of it going into the sewer system. Also, we have porous pavement. The water just goes right through it. There's a box below it, and the water goes right through the pavement into that box. And that box feeds pipes that go into the earth, and they're perforated. They have little holes in them, so that water can feed the soil and feed the grass and feed the land here. Before this existed, it was just a regular sidewalk. So when we had a rainstorm, hundreds of gallons of water would just sheet off of the sidewalk here and go into the sewer system to be processed by the city or to overflow into the creeks, right? Now, instead of that, those hundreds of gallons are actually going right through the pavement into this whole system that is feeding the land instead of becoming a problem for the sewer system. All of that is being held here in the land and rerouted into the soil underneath. You can't see it, but that's what's happening. We would love to see more of this. More trees, more porous pavement, more innovative ways to manage stormwater that really create public amenities and create beauty. And to have people really understand when they walk down the street and see that tree there and go, that's a good thing, that tree.
In the parking lot under the Twin Bridges in East Falls. This parking lot was built to serve the people who use the recreation trail along the river and also our business district. As we were working to design it, the people in the neighborhood and the East Falls Development Corporation said, We don't want this to just be a parking lot without thinking about the environment. Normally, when a parking lot like this would be developed, they would put storm sewers and pipes underneath and drains all around, and all the water from the parking lot that had all the oils from the cars would go into the drains, and that water would drain right into the Schuylkill River because we are like 50 feet from the Schuylkill River. So instead of doing that, the water flushes across the top of the parking lot, taking all of the oils from the cars and the trash, and it goes into a stormwater retention basin. And that dirty water is being cleaned by going through the earth. And it's also delayed how quickly it gets to the river. So we've got cleaning of the water, it's really water quality, and also the timing of the water into the river is slowed down.
Although schoolyards in Philadelphia tend to be mostly paved, in totality they're not a large proportion of impervious surfaces. But we felt that schools were really important because they're centers of community and they're places of learning. So what better places to demonstrate native landscapes and the working of a natural water cycle so that kids begin to make those connections about how they treat the land, how we build our land, has an effect on our water.
When we started getting involved with this project, this schoolyard every day had 22 cars parked in it, driving in and out during the school day while the kids were out here on recess. And in addition to that, we had a huge dumpster with trash and sort of urban goo oozing out of it. So that was an unhealthy situation that there was just no reason for it. And at first, our base requirement was just getting the cars and the dumpster out of here. And then we were able to move on and say, okay, this is a schoolyard in a city. Many of these kids, they don't have the benefit of seeing season changes, and we have enough room here to actually put some green garden in here so they can start enjoying the wonder and magic of plants. And then at the same time, we were contacted by the school district to actually think very creatively about our schoolyard, and we all realized this was an opportunity to actually try and be a model for other schools in terms of making the schoolyard sustainable. So we started thinking about the greening aspects of the school and the stormwater drainage in particular. We worked with a very wonderful group here in the city called the Community Design Collaborative, who brought a volunteer group to work with us to start developing master planning concepts. We had parents involved and some teachers, and then community partners like the Horticulture Society, the Water Department, and other partners.
The Home and School Association here was really leading the effort. So they more or less invited us and said, we really have this great vision. We want to transform our school, starting with the schoolyard, and can we actually make this a stormwater management project? In the past at Greenfield, the idea for water management was really get the water off site as quickly as possible. So everything was paved and all the runoff was directed to inlets directly connected into the city's combined sewer system.
The first thing I said, well, has anybody considered taking up all this asphalt? Because to me, the asphalt was the prime problem with the schoolyard in terms of its imperviousness. And then it turned out my initial assumption wasn't the most effective solution. Leaving a portion of the asphalt here helps the efficiency because it actually directs the water to the rain garden areas. The whole schoolyard doesn't have to absorb the water. We just have to have it engineered so that the infiltration areas we have either under porous paving or under the rain garden areas has the capacity to absorb all the water that drains off of the asphalt.
In a schoolyard, you can't remove all the pavement. Kids are running back and forth. They're really active places. So we need hardscape, but that hardscape is draining into a rain garden. So that water will only make it into the sewer system in the heaviest rainfalls. So a project like this actually helps to reduce the number of those overflows into the Schuylkill River, which is only like 2 blocks away from here.
There's no substitute to actually physically walking over to the river, seeing the river, and realizing that all the water that goes down that drain has a very short path to get right into that river.
Here's our little thermometer. You can see the different colors, so we can figure out what temperature it is.
It's a little kind of red and it's green in there.
70% of the children here actually bust through the lottery system from all over Philadelphia. So those kids arrive in the morning on a bus and then they go to school, and at the end of the day they get on the bus and they go away. A lot of those kids are never exposed to the fact that a block away is the river. It's a multi-pronged approach we have, where we realize the integrated curriculum is just as important as the physical improvements, if not more so.
There's a difference in looking at asphalt versus looking at trees and plants that flower in the spring and give fruit in the late spring and early summer, and there's actually giving back something to you as a kid. You can go pick the blackberries, or you can go pick the pears from the pear tree, or those kind of things. It's just sort of a different interaction with an urban environment.
Do you want to guess what kind of mint this is? Smell it, taste it?
Like a peppermint? Spearmint.
Spearmint, exactly.
It brings an outdoor classroom for students. It gives them an actual real-world connection to what they're learning in the classroom environment. There's different facets of this project that will change over the years in terms of how it interacts with the curriculum that they're learning. It sort of engages in a different way and cements it in the brain in a different way.
Is it a pear tree?
It's a pear tree, you got it.
If we don't expose the kids to the ideas of environmental stewardship and ecology and why we're doing this, we would not have been successful, because the life of the project has to go on through the students themselves.
Thank you everyone for coming tonight. This is a really important date for us. We have a whole group of parents as well as a number of community partners.
One of the things that the Home and School Association felt very strongly about was to make the schoolyard part of the community's open space. Creating some more green space for this neighborhood in Center City that doesn't have a lot of green space immediately adjacent to it. It certainly is a challenge to start with a really big project. It is much easier to start small. It might just be one small garden or a tree planting project. One